set aside. Okay. We've got a quick set of slides, some of which tease a little bit of what you'll see tonight if you're attending the community workshop or charrette, but we're trying to not be super duplicative in a lot of these so that folks don't get really tired of seeing the same stuff. And then Matt's going to go over a set of slides, a little bit of recap from when we talked at the board meeting last time of like starting to get your mind thinking about like some of the initiatives that the URA could take on and looking at other peer communities. And then really we want to use most of the time with you all to hear from you and to brainstorm, ask you questions about like what your visions individually are for the downtown, and then talk about how you see the URA helping to advance, you know, whatever comes out of the downtown master plan from a recommendations and strategies standpoint. So just to get everybody on the same page, I think you all are probably pretty familiar with the scope of our effort, but this is the study area for the downtown master plan, and it aligns almost perfectly with the URA boundary. This one section is not a part of the URA boundary, otherwise everything else is, which was a recommendation that came out of the growth policy to try to like really strategically link up this effort with the URA's boundary and sort of purview. In terms of the scope of what the master plan is that we're working on, and these are kind of the kind of like deliverable oriented pieces, but I think the conversation is going to be wide ranging with the community and kind of already has been. We'll have a set of framework recommendations, and so those are the types of things that can lead to changes in zoning code, can lead to programmatic changes within the city. They'll revolve around things like land use, mobility, parks, public space, places where we can improve access in and around downtown. We've got a component that's streetscape improvements focused. We know that the city's done quite a few improvements, especially around like the intersections and ADA compliant crosswalks in recent years, but we're hoping that, you know, the community can talk more about what kind of amenities they might like to see in the streetscape. A piece of that will be a wayfinding plan. So trying to really strategically link all of the assets and gathering places within the downtown. There's a piece that's going to revolve around economic development, looking at market conditions as they exist today, projecting out a bit. That this strategy workshop kind of falls into that bucket. And then we're scoped with a housing and parking study, and those two are really pretty inextricably linked. A piece of that is better understanding the demand from the housing side within the city and especially within the study area. And then looking at opportunity parcels, maybe potential for upper story conversions, which I know the URA is already kind of working towards. And we'll check that with feasibility and development to really try to map out a plan for the city to implement and hopefully for the URA to help with that implementation. In terms of the timeline, you can see we're still kind of on the early side of the process. We had the chance to meet with the board. We, at the kind of early outset of the project, we're doing a lot of existing condition analysis on site, met with a lot of stakeholders in person, and then continued that virtually over Zoom for the last few months. We've been doing a lot of analysis behind the scenes, and this is really these next kind of 3 days is really our first opportunity to have like a really broad public conversation. We get a lot of turnout at the events this week. We'll continue that as we go. And then late January, maybe early February is when we'll be targeting to come back to start to like talk in focus groups with some of the early recommendations and like alternatives. On the note of engagement, I mentioned we've done a lot of stakeholder interviews. We had a booth at the farmers market back in August, so we did some kind of intercept interviews with folks who were willing to talk then and mark up on that. Have had a couple presentations to boards and elected official entities like you all. We had a really successful vision survey online where we had almost 400 people respond, had a ton of open-ended inputs, which are admittedly hard to like sift through, but provide a lot of really valuable information. And you can see that a lot of those respondents were Livingston residents. We were really trying to get a visitor perspective as well, knowing that that's really critical to kind of the downtown economy. And then there's also a form on the website right now that's kind of open-ended, share your ideas. It's organized under a couple different buckets. So things that have to do with like land use, things that have to do with mobility, things that have to do with open space. And we've gotten a lot of traction on that so far. I think the big selling point on that is the convenience for folks, so they can go on any time of day when like an idea strikes them and kind of throw it into the mix. In terms of some of the themes that we're seeing so far, this is specifically from the vision survey. When we asked folks what their vision for the future of the downtown is, you can see that it's very community centric. It spoke to a lot of the like character and historical assets within the downtown, and then this desire to be like increasingly vibrant, resilient, and accessible to everybody in the community. And we're starting to collect kind of what we're calling a set of vision themes that are coming through all those conversations we've had. And there's certainly more ideas than we've heard than this, but this I think captures pretty well the consistent themes. So a desire to diversify the mix of uses in the downtown. And I think the emphasis on that has really been, how does Livingston's downtown stay like uniquely local and serve its local population while also welcoming those visitor interests? How do we strengthen connections to this really tremendous wealth of assets that the city has already? So how can we speak to the rail history, connect to the river, strengthen that relationship as a gateway to the national park? Parking has been like a point of concern for folks, which is not atypical to a downtown process like this. And so there's clearly a desire to like right size the parking for the downtown. And what that really means is making sure that the supply is supporting those immediate local business needs, but then if there is any future redevelopment or more housing or hotel uses that come downtown, making sure that there's the capacity to support those. And then Livingston has a really rich arts culture program and history, and so finding ways to really make the downtown a celebration of that, right? And getting folks from everywhere within the city and the county to come and use this as sort of the main meeting space.
I don't know if I'll stay Anderson, I guess. I'll stay Anderson.
You can.
Yeah. So we've been pulling this data to start to understand conditions in downtown. So just giving you a little bit of an overview of that. 333 businesses at least say they're sited downtown, which is about half the business. That's about 2,000 jobs. Sort of the types of businesses you would expect: retail, food service, professional services. I did some comparisons to other downtown areas in Montana, just to kind of see the density of things going on. So this shows number of households and number of jobs within a half mile, and Livingston sort of in that sort of an average, which I would say in terms of households within a half mile of the downtown, a little bit lower in terms of number of jobs when you look at the comparable cities. But within our boundaries, so the half mile radius is about 1,600 households. Within our little boundary, it's about, I think, 700, 800 households. So definitely capturing some of those surrounding neighborhoods that have a little bit more housing, but within line with peers. And we also are looking at visitation trends. And one thing that really jumped out to us is sort of the large jump in lodging tax that's been collected. And that's probably related somewhat to new hotel opening, but also sort of the jump in visitation to the area. And then we've also been looking at the physical attributes of the downtown and mapping sort of where we think there is potential for change. So we're looking for vacant parcels that are underutilized for whatever reason, whether it has a old building on it or a small building on a large lot. Trying to understand if development were to occur in downtown, where is it most likely to occur? And these are sort of our indicators of that, where those might happen. A lot of, you would think, sort of parking lots and some publicly owned parcels too might present themselves as opportunities. So wanted to give that sort of background, but really what we want to talk to you all about today is sort of how the URA fits into the plan. And so I've shared this at the URA meeting that we had, or we presented to you all, about a month ago, I guess it was. But in our mind, we sort of see your role as helping us identify strategies, investments, helping to guide drafting of the plan, and then really figuring out how you all can be implementers, as a board. And this is, from our understanding, a great time, an optimal time for you all to sort of think or rethink how the URA sort of functions, or supports the downtown efforts. Like I said, we did some comparison to other Montana urban renewal agencies. Identifying sort of the common types of programs they provide. And so this bulleted list is a list of all the things that we sort of identified that different URAs are doing throughout the state. Running the gamut from just supporting gap closure for new investment in downtown to things like marketing and branding and events and a whole bunch of things in between. And we sort of broke that out by different cities and in Montana. This is just kind of a flavor of the number of things, and most URAs sort of have, you know, 2 to 5 or 6 different programs they do. Obviously, that kind of depends on the amount of increment that's being generated. You know, places with more new developments or higher end developments have more money to work with, more opportunity to do different things. And so, just giving sort of a reference to what some of your peers are doing. And we can come back to these slides because they might be helpful reference. But really what we want to do is kind of dive into a discussion with you all. And really, I think it's really a great place to start is to kind of hear from the 4 of you, sort of your vision for downtown in the next 20 years. And then we can start to kind of dig into, you know, what is needed to get to that vision. And then really, how does the URA participate in that? And so Annie's going to take some notes. I'm going to probably sit and take some notes too. Really kind of see this as a discussion. So, and yeah, really, hopefully sort of outcomes in my mind would be sort of a clear understanding of kind of what you guys are wanting to get out of the planning effort. And then starting to identify perhaps some places or programs that you might want to explore, expand, ones you're already doing. And then I think a good thing also would be if you have questions that we can help answer, we'd love to do that too. So if, you know, I have this idea about how sure it would work, that's something we'd love to dig into and to help provide it. So we can kind of make this plan a guide for you guys' efforts going forward. So anybody want to volunteer to sort of share their vision first? I'm gonna make all 4 of you opine, but anybody want to start off?
I'll start off.
Okay.
I'm Julie Evans, and I live in Central Business District in
Great.
a small house that was built in 1900 on the railroad. And I am within walking distance of it, and I love the whole Livingston downtown area. My vision and when I think about what I really appreciate is what people I see in business in our downtown are locals. And people I'm gonna open a jewelry beading business. They can do it. It's affordable. I can do it, and a lot of them fail, but at least they got to try.
All right.
I love not seeing all the big national chains in our downtown. And most of that is because the locals can own the businesses. They've established relationships with us as citizens and part of the community. And you're not just working with, or if I want to have something done, I'm not just working with somebody that's reading from a script and this is the policy. So I really love the uniqueness of what we have downtown. I would love to see that in 20 years, that we're kind of a model of the non-corporate big box retail stuff. And that there's places in our downtown that everybody can enjoy. It's not, oh, you have to be super rich to go to that store, or we have those stores, but there's not many of them. But I see at our, I go to all the little festivals and walks and stuff like that in town, and I see everybody there. We had a gay wedding in our town, and everybody was there, from little kids to grandparents to young people. I mean, it's all, the whole town. And, I love that. And that's, for me, I would love for that to continue down the road in the future. And not make it so expensive in our downtown that the only companies that can afford to be here are the big corporate entities that have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
Are there things you want to improve that would?
I think about that. I just love the quirky craziness of what we have. And
So not too formal.
it's not, oh, I'm dressed up, this is as dressed as anybody gets around here. And I love that. What I really think hard about what I would want to change, and nothing really big comes to mind. I mean, now, having a house that's in walking distance of businesses, that means people park on our street that don't live there. And I never thought I'd live in this small town and have to worry about parking, but we do. And so parking, I think, that's, I hear that being said a lot, but I also don't want to see this giant parking garage stacked out, at the end of the street. That's kind of, I don't have any big improvement, and I don't have a business here. I'm retired, so I don't have to worry about commuting or anything like that. So those things aren't in my area of concern, but I could see that if I was, trying to make a living here. So, that's kind of the way I see it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No pressure, but Julie filled up a whole sheet.
Oh.
No pressure with all of that.
Anybody who wants to go next?
Okay, so, Julie has set the bar pretty high for me, I'm Rick Van Aiken. I probably represent the retiree sector of Livingston. Retired from the railroad, and 40 years ago, I might have said that I envisioned Livingston being a railroad town forever. Don't know why I never have been able to understand why it can't yet be, because the shops there were a valued component of the old Burlington Northern system, would say. But my vision for downtown Livingston is in 20 years is that I really like a lot of what Julie said, because I envision that the downtown Livingston will be made up of number one. We should be able to have more people living in the downtown area, and a major concern we've not been able to really figure out exactly how to do it. And we've had a lot of people say it's almost unworkable, but to convert second stories in the downtown area into living space.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those second stories have been converted into law offices and things like that. So it's doable, but I don't know if it's necessarily easily doable for housing. But you need to be able to do it, because that component, the people are going to generate the vibrancy that we want in the downtown area. Because I envision that the downtown businesses are made up of things, there's multiple things that we've talked about. I've been involved with the senior center for years. And multiple things we've talked about for years that why nobody comes up with the idea of taking that corner unit at the senior center and making ourselves a little bodega, a grocery store, because seniors and people downtown just need to be able to step out and go get a loaf of bread and a carton of milk instead of having to take the bus or drag it out to a grocery store. One of the things I don't envision, I've been told this by multiple other people, is we are dismayed by what is happening in Bozeman because we don't like what I refer to as the New York canyons, these multi-story buildings, so that there's almost no sunlight. It's to the main street, we want to be able to have trees and benches and be able to enjoy the outdoors. And I don't see how you can do that when you feel like there's no sunlight where you're sitting. The most needed improvements probably is trying to figure out a way to developing workable parking for Livingston. We don't want, like I say, we don't want that canyon effect, and parking structures tend to be dull and gray and not very inviting and all that stuff. So it seems to me like there's vacant areas or open spaces, right? And very tangent, at least, to the downtown area that would easily be able to convert it to at least a second floor or a third floor parking that it wouldn't have to be, but it sure would be nice to figure out how to make them pretty and or at least inviting. In terms of improvements, we're always trying to think of how to make it as natural as possible, and that involves trees, but also just what would be the right term for it? Just kind of flower boxes, that kind of stuff. Everything is left up to the businesses, and a lot of the businesses in Livingston don't have the time, the money, or the wherewithal to be building flower boxes in front of their, and trying to maintain it in front of their, and of course, the biggest issue you have is who's going to maintain them and who's going to keep them from being, picked over by some drunk in the middle of the night or something, things like that. So there are issues with that one. We've always, as a town, we've always kind of liked and enjoyed and appreciated our downtown bars and eateries and stuff, but some of them obviously are pretty inviting to people who have a destructive bent sometimes, and I don't know how to change that, but I'd like to see it changed. But as far as rules and programs that the URA take on,
Well, we can get to there, we can,
the one thing I have to say is, I appreciate the way you're broken down into short-term and long-term.
Uh-huh.
Because I think one of the issues that URA, like most any kind of program runs into is long-term funding. How can you build out and carry the programs forward when you cannot promise that, you know, because a lot of our funding is basically politically driven, you know, in one way or another. You know, there are people in the world who don't think you should have such a thing as the URA. And if they had their way, we would, you know, next year, we wouldn't have any money to work with.
Yeah.
If you can't plan out into the future, I look at it like we're kind of limited from kind of the short term. 0 to 3 years.
Okay.
But I'd like to see it. There's all kinds of things because we talked about the need for us to be able to have some influence to improve housing, particularly low income housing. I was just down to the ribbon cutting at the granary.
Yeah, I heard you mention that area
today. And they're calling that workforce housing. Has to be workforce housing, and it better be workforce that somebody making at least, I'd say at least $100,000 a year. Because those are expensive apartments.
Yeah.
For the average waitress or counter person in Livingston, there's no way you can afford $2,000 a month.
That's what they were quoting.
How much was it, sorry?
Minimum starting at $1,750.
For studio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
So.
I think there's some that were 1,600 on the ground floor.
Oh, they need to get that information out. The board around town has been 2,000 and above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until today's ribbon cutting, I guess.
Well, and they haven't leased them all, they
Yeah.
leased. The weird thing to me was, so everybody was encouraged to climb all the way to the top. And for the view and all that stuff, but I'm going, first of all, I don't know how you're even allowed to build an apartment building like that without a fire escape. Per se, of some, you know, or without an elevator.
No,
Because it's a long climb to the top. But the person, they say, who has rented or is leasing that top unit is a designer from New York who wants to just use it as her studio. She designs clothing. Plan clothing, don't
It's a good spot to design that. Well, should we,
And I'm looking at like, well, on that top part, you may need flannel. It's
You wanna-
exposed.
yeah,
I'm very.
No, it's good for you.
you
met them.
you met Julie.
Each one's a.
Yeah.
So.
I'll write really big.
I've spoken to you guys.
Yeah,
about
yeah,
what,
right, yeah.
My vision for the downtown is already, I think, to put it as like succinctly as possible, I'd love something that's a downtown that's easy to access, like connected to the rest of the parts of towns, unlike Julie, I live outside the urban renewal district, and it's quite difficult to access by anything but car, or if you're waiting around for the wind rider every hour and a half, which I don't think anyone does except for people who live in the senior center. And that's inviting and easy to stick around. So for me, that would be things like making sure bike lanes and pedestrian access are accessible, or there's connections to the other wonderful trails that we have, so that you can walk in and out of downtown in a way that's, you're not feeling like you're gonna get hit by some truck that's driving through.
Yeah.
Placemaking, which you guys mentioned at our last meeting, is lovely, like plazas and green space or pocket parks, just little things that would keep people around. For me, I think there's like a huge lull if people are visiting in the summer, tourists and what have you, between when they might be at the shops and when they might be going to dinner. So like if you go there, I think I mentioned this to you guys, like if you're downtown at like 5:30 on a Saturday, you're like, whoa, where is everyone? Because there's like a gap and there's nowhere really to go. Sacagawea Park is in our district, and that to me, I think is an opportunity to make sure that the park is beautiful and utilized, and is Miles Park as well. Is Miles Park in our district? Miles Park as well, which I've only ever been to for the farmers markets. There's not much else going on there. And I think I often even forget, even though I'm part of URA, that our district is more than just Main Street, like the photo that you guys have on your, the first screen, like that's what everyone thinks of as downtown. Exactly, like when you think of Livingston downtown, that's what you think of, and our district is larger than that.
Right.
We have Park Street, we have Sacagawea Park, it's a district, right? Like there's other opportunities beyond Dustin Street, and I think aside from the facade grant for the Shane Center, for example, like I can't even remember us engaging with other areas of our district as long as I joined like a year ago. So just something to keep in mind. And I did some research for all the urban renewal agencies that you guys also looked at, and I have like a ton of examples of programs, so when we go there.
Awesome, great.
It's a happy.
Yeah.
I just
Thanks.
Andy, bigger.
All right, yeah. I was trying to leave
Yeah,
it
I got the
out
other
in
half.
one.
Can you do a little,
Let's see if I can get into that.
little
Well,
drawing?
everyone said- Right, for me, the vision to have downtown feel like a place you can belong in as a maker or as a citizen, consumer, maybe someone. I love how Julie talked about, if you want to open something, you can do it. I think we have a lot of underutilized vacant spaces, both existing storefronts that, have blockage on the windows. And you're like pass by for year upon year being like, why is that not used? Who owns that building? But then there's also just kind of what Rick was talking about, just lots of land that are underdeveloped that may be currently used for parking that are never used for parking, or just things that we might not even see as potential areas. I think with our housing rehabilitation program, there's such potential to develop those lots and then keep that first floor commercialized in some aspects or community space in some aspects. I really would love to see downtown be somewhere that people can utilize after hours. Like I think a lot of the reasons we do have such an overwhelming bar community is there's not much for anyone to do outside of bars after a certain hour, or even out of restaurants. If you don't have the money to say spend on going out to dinner, where can you hang out? I think we can utilize a lot of park space, but also indoor space for the colder months that are open to the community in some positive, beneficial way. I'm very curious to hear you guys expand upon what the category of incentivizing community benefits includes in other areas in Montana or elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think I would love to see higher paying jobs downtown and more of them. I actually was I thought we looked really low in terms of housing and then jobs in the downtown area, considering the density of our downtown. And that could come back to those vacant spaces. Let's see, I said wholesome spaces. Busing, I think an important part of keeping our downtown activated is having busing to other things that are gonna be happening. I know this is downtown master plan, but just thinking in the next 20 years, for example, the Tesla building. There's a huge initiative with, I think almost $1 million raised so far to convert that to a community maker space, recreational space climbing gym. Could the busing incorporate, giving people access from downtown? Maybe they can walk from school or their jobs downtown and get to Tesla and back. I think that would be just important to create connections. My personal dream project is that old water tower building over on 9th Street Island. I think, I mean, I know someone owns it. It's been not used, so I'm curious, like, if that could be developed in the future as a community benefit. If you would kind of increase the access between there and downtown. Support for small local businesses, whether it's space, workforce housing. And we've all talked about that. I also love the idea of getting the community involved in some sort of projects to revitalize our district. So it's downtown, also Secretary of Miles Park, Civic Center, parking lot, for example. How can we incentivize people with less risk? Maybe they don't want to own a business, but they're willing to have a 1 month pop-up where they do something, or the learning centers, different things that people can. I know people want to get involved in our community, and there's they don't know how, they don't think they have the right funding or support. So through URA, how can we end up and how can we help connect from those dots and lower the risk for people to get involved and collaborate. Then I have an idea after Rick said his portion of like the bodega, for example, could the community somehow vote and incentivize filling those vacant spaces? Rather than seeing, no offense, with more art galleries or something that maybe the community doesn't feel connected to if they can't afford it or don't feel. And I'm not saying art galleries aren't also thinking of how to incorporate the community, because I know a lot of them are. But just.
So attracting uses that.
I mean, it's a free country, I like freedom, but I also think it'd be interesting to somehow see what the community wants most. It also helps those who want to work on a project, but maybe don't know exactly what they want that project to be, to say, oh, this is what the community's asking for. And then I just had some really quick, these are not fully fleshed out, but I was reminding myself of our bylaws and what the URA is sort of tasked with and capable of contributing to. So one is this, like, sort of aligning with historic preservation of our town and the charm and all that, reducing the blight, increasing safety, and then this is like the vague but positive benefit to the public, economically, socially. And then a huge one for us, because we are TIF resources, funded resources, appreciation of property values, increasing tax revenue in the district, enhancing the local economy, housing opportunities, lowering pollution. And I just think it's important for us to remember those things, not that we can't change our bylaws, but that's what we're already created for, so it's nice to know that.
Well, they're pretty broad, especially in Montana compared to other states. There's a lot of latitude to do a lot of different things, so.
Yeah. Oh, to summarize though, I think big picture, I would love to see the URA potentially own property or land, or at least develop it in a very beneficial way, because we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of activated citizens, and we have a lot of connections to the larger community. So we could potentially be that resource hub, not only with grant funding, but also in the ideation and development of these spaces that we want to see. I think that will really help keep the board motivated to be on the board, because we are volunteers, so it's important that we're tapping into our own visions, and then create ongoing programming for existing spaces or those spaces, so that we see the change that we're trying to create is actually working and underway, and feel connected to it.
Those are all great visions.
I didn't put I love freedom.
It's just because I said I love freedom, but it should just be period.
Why not?
Well, and instead of that.
Or
I love freedom and.
people would have that we never thought of, obviously, like, I'm not trying to limit other people's ideas.
Yeah. Well, so I guess this will be a tough question, I think. What would be the one most needed improvement or addition? If you had to pick one.
I don't know if this is limited or focused enough, but somehow eliminating or activating underutilized and vacant spaces in a beneficial way to the community. That's obviously very broad, but that's
cool.
sort of what I see as our potential, because there are, but like I said, those ones that exist that are just empty storefronts, and then there's empty spaces that people might lack the vision or resources to develop.
So for community purposes, what sort of the intent is? What do you have a sense of what is needed? Like what would we fill these spaces with? What are the things? Or is it more just want the opportunity for people to implement ideas? Or do you have specific needs or things that need to be addressed?
I think For me, I'd be curious to hear everyone's, I think we have a lot of commerce, it would be sort of spaces to hang out or go or be or contribute
Uh-huh.
that make downtown friendly to not just to people that live here, but also to visitors,
Uh-huh.
some sort of like positive engagement that isn't directly maybe tied to commerce.
Okay. Yeah. All right, one thing, we'll go back this way.
Yeah.
Great question, I might be excited to think about it, and I'll say whatever my one thing is gonna be, it's like. Already, the fact that we're addressing housing, so I'm housing out of it.
Yeah.
Addressing it somewhere. That's my one thing. It might be utilization as well, not to copy Allison, but not necessarily just the underutilized spaces, but also recognizing that the district is larger than just Main Street and whatever little piece of, second or park we typically think of.
Mhm.
And utilizing the parks, utilizing the green spaces that already exist, then, yeah, making downtown a place that you can stick around for longer. Yeah, that you can stick around, meaning like there's not, especially in the winter, there are not a lot of places to go downtown where you're not, having to buy a few beers or
Yeah,
buy a meal,
this might be a dumb question. Is there anywhere that people hang out outside in the winter?
that's not.
Maybe not even downtown, but just like,
Hang out as in,
I don't know, do an activity, like there's people that do like,
It's like cross-country skiing.
yeah.
so this is a dog crazy town, there is.
Dog park.
There's dog park,
Yeah.
there's land. And I was thinking about it, I don't know why nobody has thought about the idea of, I don't know exactly how it would work, but if you had an empty space downtown, like, I don't know, like the old, cranky ranky, garage on Second Street. Although, getting from the Elks. Anyway, that is a space that is way underutilized, and the bank, First Interstate, when they were building or reconstructing their old building, they just rented a space. I always thought, don't be place to run a bank out of, but they did it for what, 6-8 months, a year, I don't know, it was hard, but it was a long time. But there's an empty space. My thought anyway is it would be a kind of a space where people, instead of having to go down to the dog park when the wind is coming down the river at 60 miles an hour and stuff like that, to just be able to go inside and hang with the people who have their dogs.
Indoor dog park, interesting.
And indoor dog park, I don't know how that would work. When I think of the most needed improvements in downtown Livingston,
What's the one?
the one is probably to solve the parking problem. Because this has been going for, I lived here all my life. And I can tell you that this has been going on for 70 years.
So what is the problem?
Well, so we only have so many spaces on street parking downtown. And people who work downtown, it used to be a common argument and complaint was the people who work in the stores park right in front of the store because it was handy. They could walk and jump in their car and go home for lunch or whatever,
Yeah,
stuff like that. The only thing is they're taking up space for the customer.
yeah.
Now, the spaces are all taken up. I don't know how many of those spaces, because a lot of the workers are still parking, out of the immediate downtown, out of the immediate, Second Street. You what?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, and yeah. There's finding parking in downtown Livingston is tricky. And I just look at it like, and there's part of it is that I look at it like, so many of these things are tied together because, without adequate parking, how inviting it is it for somebody to come into downtown Livingston and say, oh, I want to start a clothing store.
Or just to be there for event, like, I think the art walk is a perfect example, like if you come in town for the art walk on a Friday,
I mean,
it takes you like 30 minutes to find a place.
it's like,
There's a larger event parking, there's not,
Yeah, so like-
there's nothing coordinated or
We
anything,
have these visions
Right.
and then like
yeah.
inviting people downtown.
Like, build in extra time.
Yeah,
On that one, when you say it takes 30 minutes to find a parking space, what is like the threshold of proximity there?
that's a good question, I think, I'm gonna use a specific example, so you get a half hour to find a parking spot. I parked on, for the art walk, maybe Yellowstone Street, which is like Fourth
Yeah.
Street, to get to enjoy the art walk.
Do you think that's acceptable? Is
It's
that,
acceptable to me, but like, I love walking, some
In the
people, I don't
summer.
know how acceptable it is for them.
no, I mean, that's
And
part
in
of
the
what
summer,
like
yeah.
this plan is trying to like learn about is to help calibrate parking correctly, and there's a lot of ways you can help manage it. It's about like finding the sweet spot for like, what is the community comfortable with, like, to your point of employees parking in front, right? I know the city has like been enforcing now since the summer, like the 2 hour. We have heard from a number of business owners already that they've seen a noticeable uptick in business, which is probably linked to like their staff isn't parked there, and so to your point, like somebody drives by and is like, hey, I actually do want coffee right now. But it's that changes over time, right, those behaviors, and so it's about like making sure we've got enough tools so that during events, maybe like there's a nimble solution.
and the funny thing is, if you think about it. When we have the 2nd of July parade, the rodeo parade here. Huge event, 10,000 people coming to this town for the rodeo parade. You have to witness it to believe it, because you wonder where all these people come from. And they will be parked. Clear the heck out to 6th Street or so, and walk into town for that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's usually a nice summer day, so there's that to be taken into consideration. But,
And you plan your day for it.
let's just say, there's this frame of mind that you have that, well, I wanna go downtown and look for a couple things in the, I don't know, secondhand stores and your expectancy is that you will be able to park in close proximity.
Yeah.
You're not going to park up at 6th Street, but walk down there people just won't do it.
Yeah, your time budget doesn't allow for it.
Yeah, so it's a different.
Yeah.
For events, it might be different,
Yeah.
but for daily use and for the vibrancy of that downtown community, you just have to have it available.
So I like that thought, that the idea of availability. And so it's not so much the amount or the quantity, but it's the availability when and where it's needed. All right, Julie, what about you? One thing.
One thing, okay, so. For me, what I would see would be most needed would probably be something that's for everybody. And what I hear people saying is like a place to hang out that isn't a bar or a restaurant where you have to spend a ton of money to be there. And that ties in with my kind of, I can open a shop if I want, but I also see a lot of local artists that aren't like high-end, Picasso's, but they have a lot of really good art. And I also see a lot of musicians, like I have a day job, but then I play the guitar at the attic at night. We have a lot of good local music, so if it was a hangout place. That allowed even like a little art exhibit of the sixth grade class or something. Because I see those at local restaurants and they're great. Also, we have a little thing called, Fairyland or something like that we put out at,
Very hollow.
Fairy Hollow, where people make these little fairy dioramas, and they're so cute and creative, but something like that where it brings a lot of people in to look at something and they can just be there. And also look at these local artists or creatives of some sort. So a space like that in the downtown area, I think would be great. You don't have to have any money to do it. And you can contribute if you're a local kid or
Yeah.
musician or.
Everybody can have a piece of it.
Yes,
Some way.
yeah.
That's
So,
great.
and I see the community really loving stuff. I love stuff like that too, but I also see a lot of people going to that Fairy Hollow and looking at it,
Mhm.
all kinds of people. So,
Great.
Just, I love that idea, and something we know about is there are some large amount of grant funding that is trying to go towards Park County arts. Basically, and giving the reins to PCCF to say, where do we spend this? So they've reached out to the art community to say, where do you think we should spend it, something like that. So if one of these ideas can also tap into that accessibility of funding that's really looking to channel and celebrate the arts, connect and amplify that versus, everyone doing their own thing.
Great.
That funding is there in addition to the URA's budget.
Awesome. Those were really great. So I wanted to just kind of. And we can circle back to any of the other questions, but I want to sort of move into that. Sort of discussion of programs or rules that URA can take on. So. You all now, from my understanding, you have facade improvement program and the second story residential rehab program. That's primarily the two programs that you guys are funding right now. And there is opportunity potentially to look at other things too. And so some of these other things that other URAs are doing, they are, supporting developments of new building or housing, they help fund streetscape or public realm improvements, facade you guys are doing. Some are focused on helping to rehab buildings, both residential and commercial in downtown areas, bringing them up to code where that could be cost prohibitive. Some have done things like demolished old unsafe buildings on sites and help clean them up to allow them to be developable, along with that sort of buying land, placemaking improvements and programs. So that could be permanent installations of art or a pocket park or parklets, or it could be temporary things like a pop-up festival or something. Incentivizing community benefits. So an example, say in Bozeman, is they use their URA in their downtown to try to secure affordable housing units in new housing projects that are going in downtown. So that's the community benefit that they're incentivizing through the URA, is trying to get affordable housing units built. Other examples would be a community space. It could be a certain public, like a piece of trail or sort of park improvements. That could pretty broad definition of what that could be. Some URAs use their funding for property or business loans to help support the business company or business community, and usually that's set up in a revolving loan fund where sort of money keeps circulating back in as sort of the loans are repaid, but it helps reduce sort of that cost of development. Some have paid for, infrastructure that's needed, utility improvements, water line improvements that, might be a barrier to the private market doing investment. And then even things like branding, events, marketing, you all do have a bid, so there's a little bit of sort of an overlap there potentially. That was something, but given sort of what we heard, you guys' number one improvements that you needed, activating underutilized space, utilizing the spaces that we have, addressing parking and creating spaces for everyone, which I've heard almost all four of you say in some way. Are there certain programs or ideas that maybe you've researched or others that might help address that, or might be something you guys want to work towards long term? Or in the near term as well, and maybe pet projects as opposed to, you know, a lot of what you're doing now is more programmatic, where you set up a funding pool and you sort of ask people to come to you. Perhaps is there one or two things you might want to be proactive about yourself, so.
And the one piece of advice that I would give, that I feel like we give to all of the like URA like entities that we work with, is like you have a small but mighty group, right? So you even be mindful of like capacity, don't let that like prohibit your creativity and vision, but like the most impactful things you can do are the things that are really feasible. And human nature is gonna be like, I think Allison was getting at, like, how do you piggyback onto other initiatives, right? So whether it's Park County grants are available and you're able to like do something that doubles down, or Matt mentioned the bid is doing some of this, but maybe they're resource constrained, and that's a way like for both entities to get some quick wins.
Yeah.
Lean really heavily into the things that even you all, just the four of you as individuals, know that there's like a shared passion about, because human
Or
nature.
somebody doing already.
Yeah, it's gonna be easier for you to move on it.
Yeah,
Because you're gonna have some champions kind of built in, and that, I'd say that goes to also to the like vision themes we mentioned for the community. I think none of those are incongruous with what you've been talking about so far, so finding the place where you can be kind of the most impactful.
Well, I think, I mean, most often urban renewal agencies are facilitators of something. There are some that are proactive and sort of doers and more aggressive, maybe the right terms, but a lot of times that's role of facilitating, and that through funding and other powers, but yeah, so I think that's, yeah. Dream, but let's think about how we get there, I guess it's the message there, so. Anybody have any, you want to start? Yeah, go ahead.
Before I get to like the examples that I love from other agencies around, one thought I had, well, actually, one thing I want to mention that I feel like we didn't say specifically is the Civic Center. I feel like that's super underutilized, but
Okay,
is for us to be more in tune with like the business, the bid and like public works or something. Like we don't take meetings or we don't talk to those people and ask how we can support them. And I feel like that could be a small win or like something to do.
Yeah.
From like cross collaboration projects.
okay.
We do work with bid and like on some things that they run like the flower box.
Do you guys ever have like formal meetings ever?
With each other.
Yeah,
We've had the representation at our meetings to kind of keep us posted on what's
Sure.
going on and yeah, info share really. And then just, other than that, we probably overlap at other city related
Sure.
meetings.
Yeah.
And catch up through that. I do think last year when we thought about going that direction, it was before new city management, and so we were kind of in a holding pattern until our scope was very limited at that time.
Yeah.
And not to get into economic development.
Yeah.
And now it feels like we've opened it back up to some of those bigger ideas from the original creation of the URA.
yeah, they can do anything, right, Grant?
Yeah.
The empowered more expansive, and I literally like a week ago or so was walking down Second Street and ran into Chris. She was doing something with some decorations on the street, and then another gentleman whose name I forgot walked by, and she was like, "Oh, yes, street guy, there you go, there you go." And so anyway, I think there are some opportunities to work with the bid on like a Livingston and some other. And right, I don't have my glasses on, I apologize.
Ed O'Donnell,
Yes.
I'm president of Holiday Lights Committee, and I'm the guy
Yeah.
that puts up all the lights in the park for the holidays. And I need money.
I knew that was good.
Thanks for
You're welcome. Put in an application.
Okay, well, yes, okay, my examples, some things, yeah, that I found from looking at the other, like the minutes from the other agencies, nearby. Bozeman does parking garage funding, not that we want a disgusting thing in our town, but, something that they do is providing funding for the parking garage, I didn't know that. They do have these really cute signs in downtown Bozeman that are just like wayfinding and maps, like that show you like where all the cool stores are. I feel like that's a cool small win, something that we might be able to do. And they do pocket parks. The Billings URA, not that we're Billings, we don't have to spend the money, but they have like a full website that they use with like attracting businesses, outlining what the tip is for, and they use it as like a selling point for bringing
Mhm.
new businesses, hopefully not the big box chains, like into their urban renewal districts, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Helena has a vision for reinvigorating unutilized properties, and they purchase or redevelop stuff that's already within their downtown, which I think is awesome, and they, within their latest downtown master plan, had a whole section of additional funding opportunities outlined, like state grants and funds, and so it's like outlined for the agency and whoever else, like additional ways to raise money outside of TIF.
Yeah,
Kalispell, which I think is really interesting, they have like somewhat of a similar problem to us, I think. 93 runs part way through Kalispell, and they have like a similar problem where our Park Street is also a route for trucks.
yeah, yeah.
And they, part of their plan is to reincorporate their highway corridor, they call it, like back into Main Street, so they thought of ways to make sure that it still feels like downtown and it's accessible and welcoming to pedestrians
Yeah.
outside of the fact that it's used as like a passageway for trucks and things.
So like, did they have? What, did they have tactics yet that they were using?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like similar to what you guys have spoken about already, like accessibility. They have like, I don't have the specific notes out, I have to go back and look.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, like making sure that you can like cross what would be like our Park Street.
Yep.
As a pedestrian, which is actually quite hard now, there's just like one, you like have to go. Do you guys know where the underpass is?
Yep. Yeah.
That's like the only place I can think of to safely cross, and like half the times cars don't even notice that people are waiting in the line.
I was gonna say that, or they see you and they don't know to stop, or they don't wanna stop.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
so sketchy.
I don't think I've ever walked.
They
through
put
it.
out these signs that say state law.
Right.
You must stop for pedestrians and stuff, but a lot of people.
Is it, do they have, not, I personally don't think these are great solutions, but some cities have those like orange flags you can grab.
I actually see something like,
You had.
weeks.
I heard it was crossing guard.
Yeah. Yeah, so
A
embarrassing.
lot of success.
We are working on a rapid flashing beacon crossing at 3 locations on.
Wow, it's good.
That'd be
What does that mean? Rapid flashing beacon?
Where you push the button and there's a sign
Oh.
that lights up.
Good.
Something happened in the road.
I thought you meant you'd have like to hold it or wear it.
Yeah, put on a badge. That or just a big arm that drives.
Yeah,
But with that,
Take one.
I will say the city, we did recently receive some grant funding, and so we are working with MDT to plot those crossings, but that might be a funding opportunity as well for the URA part of the city.
Great.
Is that a TA project? No, it is not, for various different reasons, but because it's an urban route, we're just gonna hit it that way. Yeah.
And I'm kind of cataloging everything that's thrown out there, and then maybe we can go back and kind of
Yeah,
revisit what the priorities might be.
Yep.
Or even just flagging like short, long-term kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So, by the way, we are trying to jump down and get that crosstalk a little bit. Were you done?
Oh, I had, wait. let me-
You had much.
good luck.
Good luck.
You're on Kalispell.
Yes, I was like, thank you. Yeah, and then the last one I looked at obviously was Missoula. Yeah, something that they included in their downtown master plan was like, obviously Missoula is like a legitimate city and they have neighborhoods.
a legitimate.
This is like, I love freedom. That's like- Livingston,
Livingston legitimate. Hang on.
I guess that's me. They they have a vision to not be just like one postcard view, which is similar to what I mentioned before.
Oh,
Like,
I love
considering,
that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The URA district, the urban rural district in downtown is more than just like Main Street.
So just more than just Main Street.
Yeah, and. Yeah, they also repurpose and develop old buildings and. They allocated money, which I thought was interesting from like a marketing and communications perspective to, make sure that people knew about TIF who lived within or who had businesses within the urban rural district, like I think we did like letters like we're thinking about for the URA open house. And allocated money to a communications plan so that people understood what the value of being within the district was.
And how they could benefit.
And how they could benefit, and they also have like guides that they put together for businesses, or at least this was in their downtown master plan, like. Anatomy of a shop front, which is like a visual, like leaflet on like why your shop front should have windows.
Right,
Have
yeah.
people to see inside, which is like inviting for people who are in downtown, but also helpful for the businesses as well.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting from like a communications perspective, that they allocated money for those things.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm not now.
I'm sorry. People, but anyway.
Rick, do you have an idea of an improvement or a program that you think the URA could take on or partner in? It doesn't necessarily have to be all the URAs.
I spent a fair amount of time thinking about Park Street, about the Park Street area. Because there are certain challenges involved. The north side of Park Street, number one, north side of Park Street is largely owned by Burlington Northern Santa Fe, by the corporation. And all those units on East Park Street at least are leased, I believe, to these businesses. And they're kind of there at the whim of the railroad, but the railroad is breaking in the bucks from them, but in the process, it makes it very difficult to do anything with that East Park Street. Much less I was thinking about, if we look back to the map of the URA district, for example, I don't think,
So you're taking the Google as a pointer, those buildings, is that what you're saying?
Where like Chamber of Commerce is.
yeah, well, the thing of it is, it's clear down to H Street, where the Tesla elevator is, you know, so it's not even in our district, right?
The Tesla? Tesla's not, no.
The Tesla elevator that's on the north side of Park Street.
The north side is, but I don't know, the cutoff, so H Street, it's E Street.
Eighth is there and then E
E
is.
at the, I think it's past
Right.
E,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's clear down at H Street.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, things like that make it really difficult, but I look at East Park Street. I basically wished, I thought the URA area district basically extends west to the Y on Park Street, right? Basically. Right, but it doesn't extend anywhere near far enough east to take in, there's all it's kind of like our industrial district down there, and it's almost forgotten in any kind of planning or development or anything. It's just, and in the process, you don't make it inviting at all for tourism or anything, you know, I don't know how. Long's Hotel, anyway, the old hotel, down on, it was I Street, something like that, anyway, how that ever survived down there, Now it's like kitchenette basically,
Hmm.
but they still advertise themselves as a motel. And it's low rent district, that's for sure. But, anyway, East Park Street just bugs the heck out of me.
Could be an opportunity for another district.
Yeah,
Not that I don't know to what extent that would have any impact on the north side of Park Street,
right.
just because of the ownership model there.
Sure, okay. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Another piece that, is a concern that was interesting, at least was talking about that, the Main Street crossing there, where, is where you feel safe to cross Park Street.
Mhm.
And that's partly because, we have the walkway under Park Street. Well, Grant knows that my pet peeve is the railroad runs smack through the middle of this town. And our access to the north side and,
Yeah, that's
and businesses on the north side don't amount to much. But that little block that reaches out into the north side of, that right there, reaches out into, the north side, North Main Street.
Yeah,
That used to be kind of a little business district over there.
yeah,
And it still really is kind of, but I don't know how much of that land. East of Main Street there is actually owned by the railroad because it's all linked into the shops.
there is
Area.
a portion there that's not railroad owned, for sure.
But for example, that big white building that's right there on the corner of Front Street and North Main.
Yeah.
Used to be, there was a time, that was Sawyer's Grocery.
Hmm.
Now it's
The Yamaha one.
now it's a Yamaha place. I look at that and I go, boy, if I was a Yamaha dealer, I don't think I'd wanna be stuck on the north side of Livingston. Wouldn't you wanna be out on Park Road or something? I don't know, and I never understand the business community or why they make the decisions they do about where they want to be.
Probably affordable. Julie, do you have any idea? I know you're new to the URA, right?
I am,
Yeah.
I sure am. I don't feel like I really have a whole lot to add. I think I would probably be more interested in the pocket parks and some sort of downtown. What do y'all call that? Where people can gather and,
Oh, okay, like a plaza.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean, part of what this strategy could be is identifying some of those community projects that. The URA is most interested in supporting. And then sort of, you know, perhaps planning for how you might be able to use your funding to support those type of projects. Probably not pay for it all, that's probably not something that you can afford to do, but. So you can have programmatic things that you're funding, but you could also have sort of a pool for one-off sort of community projects and sort of working towards. Helping to facilitate creating one of those, so documenting the ideas like the Main Street crossing. Sounds like the city is already kind of working on, as well as a pocket park or something. I think that's a great use of funds and definitely one of those things that can be sort of tangibly. Sort of something you own or are part of, I guess, too, so. Allison, did you have any thoughts on programs?
I don't know if I'm ready to summarize sort of all these ideas yet into like one
Yeah, no, that's cool.
project. I agree, like some more research on what other places are using, but I also think the URA has my whole tenure here is coming up on, I guess, entering my 4th year. It has been reactive to what other people are coming to us to need funding for. And at the beginning, the first couple of years, we were saying yes to a lot of things that fell into all these categories, but had no cohesion necessarily, except it had some sort of positive benefit and it was in our district.
Right.
Like other people's special projects, and I think it would be beneficial, and it sounds like we're all interested in doing something where we are being more proactive in the housing rehabilitation grant program working with the city, like that's been one great example, just more of those. Maybe we need to reserve some sort of smaller special projects fund to tap into some of these positive things that we don't know about that people want to do in the community
Yeah.
for lesser amounts. But I think it'd be great if we could take bigger chunks of the budget and tackle some of these bigger projects.
So housing sounded like that's something that's desirable. Would a new housing development be something that the URA would be interested in, or do you feel like the second floor housing is really sort of what you'd like to prioritize, or? So I'm trying to get a sense of, because, I mean, honestly, I think there might be some opportunity for the second floor housing, but I think it's gonna be challenging to get a lot of units out of that. And so I'm wondering if there's also interest in supporting a small apartment building or even townhomes or something.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Technically, our program not only is for rehabilitating second floors, but it's for net new development.
oh, okay, all right.
I think one of our potential proposals is for townhouses, right? Or well,
Some
something.
duplexes,
Oh, okay.
interested in that, and now seeing like the district out here. And we just came from this meeting that included a portion on. One of the top priorities for our housing coalition is accessory dwelling units, like we certainly.
Oh, yeah.
But I wouldn't say, this program would incorporate those. I think.
Okay, cool.
But for us, I think we've heard a lot of feedback from the community, and I definitely want to hear you guys, like, I don't see us having just housing, like 5 floors of housing. I think there has to be some in commercial. We are in a very commercial district. If people want to do housing in their backyards, this program can fund that. I think when we're talking about some of these bigger picture ideas, housing could certainly be considered on the upper floors of that new development.
Okay,
But I
so,
don't think having.
so a bigger project needs to check more than one box, so just.
For me, I think for me to feel like it belongs in main district here.
Yeah.
And not be unsightly, like I like what Rick said, we don't want to cut into the views by having something too big. I don't even know if zoning would allow like that many stories, but.
Zoning
It allows a lot.
zoning is, yeah, there's
I just know Bozeman has some really ugly apartment complexes that we don't want.
just FYI
cheap, to be honest.
for residential development in the central business district zoning district. It has to, if it's going to be strictly residential, it has to be 3 or more units. Otherwise, it has to be, mixed use.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you can't just have a new single family residential
Sure.
according to our
Okay.
code.
Yeah,
And I guess just kind of playing off your comment there, I'd be interested to know from the board because, the city is approached from time to time with different ideas by different people. And there is a lot of, I would say certainly in the South Main Street, South Second Street area, there's a lot of underutilized properties there. I've had experiences with URAs where they actually did purchase land and then that was contributed, they ran an RFP and got a development partner, and that really was the URA's main contribution to a low income housing tax credit project or some other, affordable workforce housing project. I guess that it would be helpful for me and the city to understand, is that something that's of interest to the URA? Because you folks do actually have a decent amount of money that could really be the catalyst of the project, right? Land usually is one of the barriers to entry there. And like I said, there are some larger underutilized parcels in South and South Second that are in the district, so.
yeah.
I think, do those examples you're thinking of include some sort of mixed use?
Yeah.
Or is that possible with
In my
the
experience,
development with
that's pretty
RP?
much how they always go, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mixed, not only just residential versus commercial on the ground floor, but then different types of residential kind of throughout.
Yeah,
I could point you to a few projects if you're interested, but yeah,
definitely.
it's something that I've seen a lot of URAs do, and just as things pick up steam with the Park County Housing Coalition and some other efforts in town. Yeah, I'd be interested to know if that's of interest to the group.
Yeah, that's of interest. I would like to see one of those in the short term, because I think if we could. Because what did you say was short term, 1 to 3 years,
Yeah.
0 to 3 years,
Yeah.
try and get it under.
Tomorrow.
If we can do that quickly and use the URA, whether we need a logo or something to say that this is a project supported by the URA, then we can use our own example for other people that. We don't have to do all the development, own all the land, obviously, it's not possible. But
Freedom,
just-
but I'm owning.
Example, like we've talked about in our open house, we want to provide some good examples from other cities, but we can also have examples from within our own city. As we're looking at 4 years from now, like what can we point to say, this didn't exist? URA, but for the URA, these things didn't exist, and that's really what we can be proud of.
Mhm.
So I would really like that idea.
Can I point something out?
No.
I discovered, I know about something. And I was, I got this one, oh, wait a minute. This unit right here is, the corner of Main and Lewis Street.
Mhm.
That right there, that's the senior center.
Oh,
That is not county owned. It's a nonprofit catch.
yeah,
Nonprofit.
Okay.
I think the county owns, probably say publicly owned, but,
Anyway, it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Nonprofit.
that was our coding issue, yes, yeah, I hear you.
Whoops.
Clark and-
It's,
Oh.
that's an interesting map to me, just because it shows when you start thinking about vacant spaces and copy spaces and stuff, because that county property on South B Street.
That's the Northwestern Energy Building, right?
Yeah, well.
It's about to be transferred
There's
to
something,
the
county.
there's something in the works to exchange that for property outside of town. What's the county going to do with that?
Oh, and the county. That's big county.
So my understanding from the most recent conversations with the county is. They're thinking about that property on B Street for their administrative, and then the current property out on Calendar, the city county building. They would like to turn into a law and justice center, because in a few years they'll need another district courtroom, and so the current thought is that they'll bifurcate their operations and say, courts, police, jail out on Calendar. And everything else will go on B.
Because they talked about.
I don't think they're very far down the road.
Yeah, I think
They
that
talked
would be
about
a lot of
one.
Around the east side of your house.
Yeah.
Bubbles
No,
over
I
them.
think there's a lot of conversations there.
There's been
I have been negligently.
So I'm wondering, are there any like questions that you would like us to look into? Or topics or examples or?
How much does everything cost here? I think help on the financial side of things, what does development look like, how long would it take to move one housing mixed use, how many units would that feasibly create on, say, one block, for example, like just
Yeah,
putting some numbers into this, knowing that there are multiple areas within the district that you could look into, but there might be some sort of average cost to these things.
Yeah, yeah.
average, feasibility study, I guess, on that would be really helpful in time, and then we can tie that to our budget.
yeah, okay. Put some dollars to some of these ideas, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
Is the,
I don't know.
is the library city or county owned? Property?
Like right next door, to the library.
This property, right?
Yeah, where we are, it's actually, I think it's county owned building.
Okay, because that's the corner of
Yeah,
Calendar and Third Street.
these are ones that, well, yeah, I don't think we flagged every city and county owned building.
Oh,
We,
I'm just,
there are ones that potentially could be developed, although the senior center, I don't think is an option. But this is a good example of maybe that's an underutilized parcel that's publicly owned. Yeah,
right,
Yeah,
And
and then
then-
I've got some, the city parcel on B, although I guess that's that green one there,
yeah,
down farther, down.
Oh.
Lewis, I guess there.
Yeah, the parking lot next to the high school.
yes, yeah,
wow,
city owned but parking lot, so maybe it could be something other than. Yeah.
One of the things that I always think about, or right, I think about a lot is. It seems to me like Livingston's changing a fair, in different ways. And a good example is, so down on South Main Street, I don't know what. The library or what the enterprise is gonna do with that building, because they moved over to. The old, I don't know. Farmers Green over there, but they moved over east of there. And that space right there is.
So.
I can make a
Yes,
shameless
do
plug,
it.
shameless plug for the workshop tonight. So one of the exercises in the workshop tonight is. Like, this is sort of a base map, just to get folks like brain wrapped around this and start to get folks thinking creatively. And we have like 10 sites specifically flagged to sort of like seed the conversation. And that is one of those, is knowing like its current status. The activity, for what it's worth, and hopefully like as many people show up tonight as possible, doesn't say like you can only weigh in on those 10. Like, the idea is like, start to identify what kind of uses like the community would like to see all over the study area. But those are, we've found that it's really helpful to kind of like give folks a prompt, right? And get them thinking about, if this were to change to a different use, like it's in such a critical spot where it's like the gateway to the park, the gateway from the park to downtown. So what does the community want to see there? Right.
Any other questions, or, I mean, we have like a minute left, and actually, so. Wanted to make sure we're at your disposal to help sort of guide, so I think. What we're gonna do with this input is throughout the plan process is not only inform the plan, but also create sort of. A strategy for you all, or a guide for you all to use perhaps to kind of further your efforts and programs. And so if there's anything from other communities or any sort of legal questions or anything like that, we'd love to be able to sort of support you with that sort of information, and hopefully it's a resource that you use and going forward. So other than that, I'd love to hear any other questions, but I want to thank you for your time and your ideas, and it's been, I think, a really super productive conversation.
Yeah, this is super helpful, and thanks for being willing to entertain the conversation, because there have been instances where like we'll work on a master plan project and then it's like, here you go, URA, I hope you do something with it. So it's nice to have the like thoughts being co-generated, so that we can just help make sure the plan is aligned with things that like give you some work program.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But Graham would probably tell you, he's found out Livingston is kind of famous for doing studies and not doing anything.
But I'm kind of famous for doing stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
All
I
right.
think just a note to the room that, our regular scheduled, urban renewal agency meeting is the 28th, and this month is specifically focused on an open house discussion on the residential rehabilitation grant program. Anyone's welcome to take a flyer here. We're gonna start posting these around town, and then also try and brainstorm ways to reach owners and developers that are within the district or work within the district, potential mailers, but now I'm realizing that's a lot more households and businesses than maybe we have
I'm really looking
postage for.
forward to the workshop, if we can get the business community to come and talk to us somehow. So,
Definitely, we always launch this as a pilot program, so if anyone like right off the bat was working on something that fit, great, they can start applying already, but it was more of a pilot to see how we can adjust it to fit other projects and answer questions for projects that may be coming down the pipe.
We've had a few inquiries.
Yep.
I think you were CC'd on at least one of them.
Great.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting. We do not have public comments scheduled for this particular meeting, but we will on the 28th. Motion to adjourn.
So
Right, second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we'll meet again in the City County Complex Community Room on November 28th at 4:30. Thank you.